Professor Marcelloni. He is currently a full professor at the Department of Information Engineering of the University of Pisa, and also director of the Knowledge Hub on Artificial Intelligence of the European Alliance Circle U, and the coordinator of the Good AI Lab of the University of Pisa. He is also a member of the board of directors of the University of Pisa. His main research interests include federated learning, explainable artificial intelligence, fake news detection, sentiment analysis and opinion mining, and clustering algorithms.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I was just, yes. Perfect.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you just for inviting me for this talk. And as we told before, I am the coordinator of this knowledge hub. This is a special center of this alliance that consists of 9 universities in Europe, and we are developing different things since 5 years. But in the last year, we decided to open this knowledge hub on AI because we strongly believe that AI is fundamental today, not only for the research and for society, but it's very, very important for education. Okay? And I am also the coordinator of this lab, the Good Lab. The name already indicates what we want to do, just to develop good AI. Last but not least, I am also the co-principal investigator of this very large project that we have in Italy. This is a big project with all the universities in Italy inside, and this project is spread over all Italy with 10 centers. One of the centers is located here in Pisa and is coordinated by the university. So, just a very short introduction, but very short about AI. We just have that's the term artificial intelligence was coined several years ago, just approximately 70 years ago. But I think that we started to talk about AI very much in the last 5-6 years. The reason is that most of the time today we have really application of AI everywhere. So AI is very, very pervasive. Our smartphone, our vehicles, and so on. Everywhere we have AI. In the years, probably the people just listen this term AI because watched some movie in which, unfortunately, the artificial intelligence was considered against humanity. And this actually is something that we inherit also today, because when I have the opportunity to talk with the people about AI, most of the time someone asks me, but it's true that AI will destroy humanity? And probably can be true, but we have a long queue of possible causes, unfortunately, just to destroy humanity today. And what happened in the last years? First of all, I don't know if you are asking about AI, but just a short introduction. Most of the AI is today based on the machine learning paradigm. What is the machine learning? I like very much just to compare the traditional programming with the machine learning. In the traditional programming, you just give a specification to the programmer, the requirements. And the programmer writes code to solve the specific problem. Just to give you an example, let us assume that we want to create an application to decide when we receive an email if this email is spam or not spam. This is a typical classification problem. In the traditional programming, our programmer has to write some code to analyze the text of the email and to look for some specific words and to decide if these words indicate that this email is spam or not spam. In the machine learning, we change completely the approach. The programmer just has to write the code for learning from data a model, and is this model that solves the problem. So in other words, it's like we extract the system from the data. Okay? And just to make this work, we need what is the literature is denoted as the trend set. Means a number of email manually labeled as spam and not spam. But it's very interesting this change of paradigm. Today, who is working in machine learning is obliged just to write not the program to solve the problem, but to write the code for learning the system to solve the problem. Okay, we change very much the paradigm today. Yes, I have just two. So, in the last 70 years, when we started to use artificial intelligence, general machine learning, we use it a lot. What's in the literature is denoted as discriminative AI or classical AI. And an example of classical AI was the sample that we made before, talking about spam or no spam emails. Today, we changed a little also the type of AI we are using. Because we are using also generative AI. What does it mean? It means that this model learns to generate new data that is similar to the data that's what trained on. The example, of course, is the tool like ChatGPT, in which we just write a prompt and the system is able just to generate text to really answer to our problem. Okay? Just to give you another example in this sense, this is an example in which we compare discriminative AI with generative AI. In the first case, we have some paint from different painters, and we want just to teach the system to recognize paint from a famous painter, Van Gogh. What actually the model in this case? The model really estimates the probability Py given x of a class y given an observation x. In other terms, we just submit a lot of paint to the model and we label Van Gogh, not Van Gogh. And the system is able just to really create a model to distinguish these two classes. In the case of generative AI, we use again a lot of paint, but in this case, what we would like to obtain is just an estimation of the probability Px of observing an observation x. So when we ask to generate a node, for instance, the model is able to generate because really just was trained with this enormous quantity of data and really is able to generate new images. So these are today the two forms of AI we have available, but the generative AI was really very disruptive because all the people today knows AI thanks probably to ChatGPT or all the other possible application of AI. Just an economical consideration, because it's also good that today when we talk about AI, we talk about also application of AI, and we know that there are a lot of investment just for developing AI, most of the time for developing good AI, but sometimes also for developing non-very good AI. And we will come back on this concept in very short time. What is interesting from this forecasting about the economic value of AI in the future from McKinsey & Company, famous consulting company, they just forecast that the discriminative AI will be, in any case, the AI with the highest economic value in the future. We talk a lot about generative AI, but still we have that is the classical AI dominant in the next year. You can see that they forecast trillions of possible economic value in the next year. So you can really realize that is a lot of money. What I want just to discuss with you today, I want just to discuss the possible risk of AI. What is the risk? We thought that our way to learn model in AI is to use machine learning. Machine learning means to learn a model from data. It's very intuitive to understand that if we have some problems in the data, we just bring the problem to the model. So it's like we transfer the problem in the data to problems in the model. This is the big problem we have today. In general, when we talk about possible AI risk, we talk about two categories of risk. The first category are risks inherent in developing the AI models, derived from data. And the only solution we have are technological solutions. The other risk is the misuse of the AI. So it's someone who uses the AI against society, against individual. What is the solution in these things? We have just to work by using regulation. In particular in Europe, but not only in Europe, probably also in Peru or in South America, we have really regulations for just put some limits, some safeguards to the use of the AI. I want to discuss with you just some possible problem that is derived from that. Probably one of the most popular problem is the gender bias. What does it mean? It means that the model we trained, we learned, when produce an output with some bias towards a gender. A very famous example is this example. Amazon, probably everyone here just knows Amazon, decided just to implement a recruiting tool just for recruitment. But they discovered that, applying this tool really had a very strong gender bias. What was the reason? To implement the tool, they used the historical data. And Amazon is a very large warehouse. And they had a lot of warehouse workers inside, and most of the time these warehouse workers were men. So this bias was derived from the historical data. And when the tool just read sometimes related to women, just discarded the city. Okay? This is a very famous example of gender bias. Normally I show also this other picture. What is this picture? This picture is the percentage, male, female, of workers, of employees, inside the big company. And it's very interesting that we have some prevalence of male with respect to female. So someone is really deducing from this percentage that probably the AI in general will have some bias towards male for this reason, because the percentage of employees inside this big company is really with male prevalence. Another example, in this case we have a gender, a racial bias. This is a system that was used in the United States. You know that the United States doesn't have a very good healthcare system. But the state, the government, just provides some money for people very ill with economic difficulties. And they want to just to implement a system to decide the people just needed to have this type of help from the state. And also in this case it was very interesting that this system really had, for a given risk score, the black content are considerably sicker than white parts. What was the reason? The reason again were the historical data. In the historical data, they considered the money spent by the people for healthcare. Of course, in the United States, the white people is normally richer than the people coming from other countries, from black people or Mexican people and so on. So this data affected the result of the system. And in other words, they just gave the money to a lot of white people instead of to really the population and needed for this money. Other example, robustness. This is a very interesting aspect. When we generate an AI model, we can really generate a model with an high accuracy, 99.99% of accuracy. But the big problem in any case when we use this AI system in critical application is when the system fails, we are not able just to forecast the effect of the failure. And you can really realize that is fundamental in critical application. Just this is a true example in which the system used in a car, this is a real car, this system just analyzed the speed limits to really recognize the speed limits. All the cars today have similar, new cars have similar system on board. But what's interesting that when you have some defect in the speed limits, you have that the system does not recognize correctly the speed limits. You cannot really because the quality is not so very good, but in any case, here there is the number recognized as the speed limit from the system. And the number is 85 instead of 35. If you think that this sometimes is a car, I just don't make the names of the car, but you can realize it's an electrical car. If you think that this car is also can also use autonomous driving, you can really realize what is the risk. But we have this risk also of robustness, also when we talk about generative AI. This is a very interesting example in which they analyze the use of large language model to help the voter. Most of the voters do not know exactly the rule of vote. So they ask the system to help them just for the regulation of votes. And it was incredible if you think the result they obtained. Okay? With a high percentage, we had that this large language model just provide inaccurate information and also harmful information. But if you see, with a high percentage, so this means that the use of ChatGPT, Gemini, and Llama and so on can really negatively affect the vote, just because they explain incorrectly the rule of voting. Okay, so this actually is also a big problem for the models. I was invited some months ago just to really talk about AI and democracy, and we discussed very long about this aspect, but these are very interesting aspects because AI can really affect some part of the democracy. Another example of problem we have with AI, the famous hallucination. Do you know what is an hallucination? When we use a large language model, since this large language model works in statistical way, they can really answer something that is wrong. So you ask something, they just combine statistical, the different tests that they have they acquired during the learning process, and they can really produce some test that is wrong. They just invent the test. Okay? And there are a lot of examples of hallucination. I don't have time to discuss. But in any case, it's very interesting that the problem of hallucination are still there. This is just an analysis they just performed to analyze how often a large language model introduces hallucination when summarizing the document. So you just provide the document, you know, they are very, very smart to summarize the documents, but sometimes they really insert hallucination in the summary. And the percentage is not negligible, because we talk for a very, very well-known large language model, we talk about 1.4%, and it's not many. Okay, so also for the large language model, we have this problem. Other problem that we have in the large language model, inappropriate content. The large language model can provide inappropriate content. You tell, but okay, I just worked with the large language model, did not obtain really this inappropriate content, probably because you work in a normal way. But if really make some adversarial attack to this large language model, really they generate inappropriate language. Just to give you an idea, this is just an experimentation that's just performed last year, and you see that very well known large language model does not suffer a lot. You see? Why? Because really they have a lot of post-processing. It's a long time that the people started to use these models, so they really were able just to post-processing the result. But other just provide terrible result from this perspective. If you just attack them with prompt, smart prompt, they really produce very bad result. Okay, other problem. Data source transparencies. All this language model should provide the sources of the output. We have the problem of copyright in this case. I don't have time just to discuss in detail this lawsuit, but was it very interesting? There was just the end of this lawsuit, and in the United States they decided that also if some books is used in the large language model covered by copyright, they use a transformative use in training, so we don't have any plagiarism. Okay, and this is very, very interesting also for the people working in research, because of course we sometimes write papers and books with copyright, but these tools can be used without any permission from outside. This is another interesting aspect, just considering the risk. I don't have time to discuss because the time is flying, but if someone interested, they can discuss later. We have also problem inherent sustainability. Why? Because when we learn a model, very complex model, we have just to consume a lot of energy and a lot of water. Why water? Because we have the cooling system of these very powerful computers, but also because when we produce energy, we need really water. I just want to conclude with some observation. To solve the inherent risk, we have technical solution, or we are trying just to produce technical solution. But this is the only way that we have. So we just cope with the different problems, just proposing different solutions. And a lot of research on AI is really working just to find solutions. The other problem, the risk arising from the misuse of AI. We thought we need the regulations. And in Europe last year, we just approved at the level of European Parliament and European Commission this AI Act. This is the fourth global regulation on AI. What's this AI propose? Just split the AI system in 4 levels. depending on the risk. At the top, we have unacceptable risk. So means systems that are forbidden. In particular, all the systems that evaluate or classify individuals or groups, or just perform mass surveillance, and so on. High risk, all the systems that impact critical structure or just impact the society. In this case, in any case, these systems are permitted, but of course the provider of this system have just to make an analysis of possible risk to society and individuals. Third group, limited risk. We have chatbot inside. In my opinion, chatbot can be not severe limited risk, but could have really high risk because can really affect the person. And minimal no risk, we have, for instance, common AI system like product recommendation engine and so on. So, from this perspective, the European Commission is producing also some clarification about the Act, in particular, just are fixing the fines that the society should pay if they really produce systems that are forbidden or they don't really respect the limits. Just a final consideration. These are the list of all the possible regulations we have to respect if we want to develop an AI system in Europe. And you can imagine this is a very strong work for the people that has to produce. But I want just conclude with this slide. What is the solution we have today? Just to work on AI, but respecting regulation and working in the direction to have a good AI. We talked a lot about human-centered AI. What is the concept? The concept is that human and AI should cooperate. So on the one side, the AI needs the humans because we have just to provide feedback, but on the other side, AI can help and can support the human. We have a lot of examples in the medicine, for instance, in which really the physicians is strongly supported by AI system. But of course, the final decision should be in charge of the humans. So, what is actually the future, at least for our view? The future should be just what is represented here. Humans and AI should co-evolve, okay? Should really work on AI in which really humans and AI cooperate and just co-evolve. This should be the final result we have to obtain. This is the big project I told you before. These are some activities of my group, but the time is flying, so I don't have time just to discuss with you. And if you want us to get some information about this, you can, of course, interact with me after this talk. Thank you. And
do we have some questions?
Thanks for your presentation. It was really great.
I have 30 minutes, really flying so fast.
I have a question. So, if there's uncontrolled AI, surely there may be lots of problems with criminality, terrorism, and even adversarial governments. So surely we need some control, some regulation. But some people argue that current regulations are too much. There's like over-regulation, and that's halting progress, innovation, and even some people say, US and arguably China develop and EU regulate. So where do you sit in this?
Okay, so just I want to really show you because normally I present because in my view this actually should be the opinion at the European level. I don't know if we were able just to really obtain this result, but when you read the 4 sentences that you have in a Act, the sentence just tells we want to regulate, but we want also to support innovation. What is my point of view? I strongly believe that we have to express regulation when the AI system becomes to be applied. So when really the people use. We should really work more freely in the research, because really we cannot stop the innovation. What is the main reason? We are, at least for Italy, we are in Europe. Europe, unfortunately, just lose a lot of time in AI. We had a big problem that you are in Peru or you are in other countries. So we are using today technologies that are not European. We are using, from an infrastructure point of view, we are using NVIDIA GPU. And of course, these are produced in the United States, in Taiwan. In terms of large language model, unfortunately, we are using large language model coming from the United States and from private companies. So at the moment, we are very late from this perspective. And we have just to really work to speed up innovation, at least in research. When you want to bring to the society, you have to control the fruits. But you should try at least to really find a way to have some solution in Europe that in some way can be comparable with the solution that you have from other countries. Should be, in my opinion, the perspective.
Do you think so? Do you think it's possible?
This does not depend on the research, unfortunately, but depends on the choice of the government in Europe. And at the moment, we have several problems. So probably this is not the problem with the highest priority, but should be possible because at the moment it's impossible to find a global act for all the earth. So we cannot negotiate the rule with the others. And in this sense, we should be able just to produce something that is comparable to what we have in other countries. Yes?
I have just a comment. Questions to
Yes.
maybe one can be provocative somehow.
Can you
Repeat? Yeah. Okay, but the first question, what do you believe about transparency in the use of AI? So there's been a discussion a few months ago about people concerned about their prompts being public, but I believe it's a good solution because the more transparent you are how you're using it, the more you can tell. This is the first one. And the second one, what about accountability? I use that, I recommend something. Who is accountable for that?
Okay, fourth question, transparency. In the Act, they use the terms transparency with two different meanings, okay? Because they try just to bring in the Act the perspective from a legal point of view and the perspective from a computer science point of view. I try to explain that. When we talk about transparency, in terms of computer engineer, computer scientist, we talk about the transparency of the model. What does it mean in practice? It means that given input, I can explain to you how this model can produce the output. A very simple example. Normally we have model very complex, but sometimes we can have model with rules. If I tell you that this was the rule activated, I can explain how that model from the input arrived just to produce the output. This is the transparency in terms of models. We have also the transparency in terms of sources. When we interact with ChatGPT, I just tell always ChatGPT because I use normally ChatGPT, so that's of course this is true for the others, LLM or other chatbots. When you interact with this tool, they produce an output. Most of the time, you are not sure that this output is correct. And you can increase just your your trust about this output if they can provide the sources of the information. Of course, if you receive an output and in the output you know that the source of the information is a scientific publication, you assume that that output is true. So in this case, the transparency is the transparency of the sources. Just concluding, for the transparent sources, in my opinion, should be really just strongly activated everywhere, because you have to know what are the sources of this information. For the transparency of the model, should be, but it's very hard, because there are a lot of papers in which I'm working with this, but honestly, at the moment, it's not easy to explain how a very complex model can really produce that. In terms of accountability, this is a very interesting problem. At the moment, I had a lot of discussion with medical colleagues, because of course they want us to use this support given by the AI, but at the end of the story, in any case, they are responsible for the final decision. And at the moment, this is what's happened from a legal point of view. Accountability, in any case, is in charge of the human. Also because otherwise we have to change a lot of laws. What will be in the future? I don't know. Why? Because also for the actor, we talk about accountability, of course, in the actor, but the actor at the moment are rules. We didn't have applications. Only when you start to have application, you realize really what happened. It's like you create the jurisprudence, but only when you start to apply the real rules. So, in terms of accountability, in my opinion, at least for the moment, all the responsibility is in charge of the units.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Bueno, ahora para continuar la sesión, el siguiente presentador es Carlos Rodríguez Calderón.